Maurice, right?
Yes.
Sorry, guys, I just started the recording. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no problem. He does the push start marketing.
Yeah.
He's
told me
he's bringing a whole group. I guess he's advertising it and then bringing a group up. So.
All right, so we're at 6:11. More people might trickle in, but we definitely can get started. Yeah. So welcome, Utcha. I'm pronouncing your name right, correct? Utcha?
That's correct. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
All right. So Utcha has extensive experience, many years of successful navigating with dynamics within group economics, and she's here to talk to us today about the importance of group economics, how it works, and her personal experience using group economics to within the Black community to create progressive forward movement and tangible results. So welcome, Utcha. We're so happy to have you. Definitely, we were excited that you could meet with us today and come in and talk to us, because basically what you've been able to accomplish is what we want to do and what we're moving towards. So if you could expand on who you are, what you do, and your network and everything like that, that would be great. Welcome.
All right. No problem. So first, I want to give thanks to everyone, for inviting me. I want to give a big disclaimer. I'm no expert. I just have lived experience. I'm working with various communities. So I'm just sharing my feedback, for finite metrics. I think definitely not the person, but overall, I can share my experience both locally and internationally around community development in terms of financial pieces. Oh, where do I start? So, along with outside of my professional world, my most important world, my personal world, I'm a mother of 5. We live on a farm just north of Toronto, about an hour, 20 minutes, 25 minutes east of Scarborough, or northeast of Scarborough. On our farm, we rear livestock and we produce organic produce. Our farm is not a cooperative, the traditional cooperative model, as in many investors to purchase the space. Our family invested, my husband and I, and in this particular space, and it's a legacy property for our children. But we are part of a broader network of like-minded individuals, so that are focusing on exiting the city and relocating strategically where there are other Black families. So I'm excited to share. This year is 9 years that we've been living here, stewarding the land. And we've had, which it may not seem significant, but we've had about 4 families move to rural properties locally. And then in the local growing town, we've noticed just an abundance of Black families that are moving in. So these are townhouse developments, single and semi-detached homes that were recently built, about 6,000 of them in the town of Beaverton. And there's a big urban flight, as you're all aware of, that's happening. Beaverton is about 45 minutes north of Scarborough. So we've noticed a lot of the families that are moving in, I shouldn't say a lot, but for a rural area. We were shocked to see a Jamaican family move up the road in our little town. So shocked and excited at the same time. So, that's been our experience, is to build community of like-minded people that have similar investment goals, because part of our work is to definitely leave a legacy for our children that's not complicated. And in that, we wanted to make sure that we are the sole owners of this particular space. So quick snapshot of the farm. We raise sheep. We used to raise goats, but since COVID, we got rid of most of them, because if anyone work with goats, they're troublemakers. So we put on a whole couple orchard. We put in a small orchard year before last, and they got out and damaged about 80% of the trees. So when we're talking about investment, apple trees and plum trees, they are not cheap, organic. So, it's a labor of love, and we're learning every year. We also rear and breed livestock guard dogs. These are sheepdogs that live outdoors as protectors of our property. Two of them, the females, live in the barn with all of the animals. We also have chickens. About now, maybe for the summer, we tend to have anywhere between 100 and 150 laying chickens. And they live in the barn protecting all of the animals. We just added a third female to the bunch. So they live in the barn, and then we have the male Mazungu who lives around the house. So he guards the entire property, the full acre that's around the house, and then the rest of the acreage is guarded by the three females at the back. Like I said, organic produce, we work with our local community to, both my husband and I have other jobs. He's a teacher. I work in social systems world, focusing on children and youth. And we do this because we have a passion for living on the land. And we definitely want to leave something of, meaning for our children, to give them, a bit of a head start. Unfortunately, again, because of my bandwidth, I think I'm just going to orate without my pictures to share a bit of my experience when we look at it from a professional lens. So professionally, I've worked in food systems, food equity, food justice, community food animation for many, many, many years. Working primarily with the city of Toronto and the province. At the national level, I'm one of the inaugural members of Food Secure Canada, which is shifted policy research around the people's framework. So our goal was to have a people's food policy. We're the only industrialized country that does not have a minister of food security. So our main goal was to get investments from the federal government to look at food literacy, farm access, equitable farm access for peoples of color, in particular, Black and Indigenous community. At least that was my area of focus. There's a whole gamut of, GMO farming and all of these different pieces. So really versed in the Canadian food story, in particular, where our community and our people settle into that story. Part of that work opened the way for me to do a lot of international work that gave me an opportunity to travel. So part of what I'm sharing today in terms of traditional African community building models is coming. Two models I want to share. One is out of Tanzania, Karatu, Tanzania, and the other is out of the Songhai Center in Benin, in Porto Novo, Benin. So in 2012, I had the opportunity to visit Arusha and Karatu, Tanzania. It was about a 3-week time that we were there exchanging knowledge in terms of women in agriculture and peer-to-peer learning experience. And I think it was probably within my first, I want to say the first week that we were there, we were invited to the local Vikoba. And the Vikoba is the short acronym, first 2 letters of each word, for Village Community Bank. And this to me was, at the time, I was blown away just by the ethic, the value, the trust, just the simplicity of this community coming together in a desert community in Karatu to put together their own bank, because the only banks that were available in this particular region are all in Arusha. So you'd have to travel about 3 hours to get to your, to your bank. And we were invited to this particular meeting that focused on who was going to get the next house. So basically the model is a collective model of community pooling resources together every month for equitable investment. So you can ask for an investment in your child's education. So if you want to send one of your children to university in Dar es Salaam or maybe abroad, you can come to the community bank and make a case for support. If you wanted to build a brick house or buy farming materials, our focus for this particular trip was focusing on farming communities. You could, come to the community bank, and there was this collective model of conversation and dialogue and processing in order to determine should the investment be made. And this was the most simple system. A handwritten ledger, which I was just shocked. We're so used to this digital world and getting things real time. And here they had this handwritten ledger going back 30 years plus, demonstrating, the capacity of this financial institution. Hello? Sorry, you couldn't hear?
No, go ahead. I just had to mute someone.
Oh, okay, sorry. So we had the opportunity to sit in on several meetings where they were determining where this lump sum of investment for the quarter would go, and basically they pooled their resources together every on a monthly basis, and then quarterly they decide how a certain amount or a predetermined amount of lump sum, how that will be divided or completely invested. And as a community, they deliberate over periods of days to determine how that would work. And, we look at how we come together as community, and we work on, community economic development pieces. But when we get into the nitty gritties, often there is, the things that I saw there are lacking in our development in terms of that trust, to just cold blindly invest, that unified values. I remember one of the questions I asked was, how do you know the person with the key to the money box isn't just going to run away? Because that's literally where the money's kept, right in a money box with two locks. So one elder has the key, the other elder has the key, and that's just how it goes. So, I started to ask questions like, how do you know somebody might not steal the key? And all of these things that we would experience more in a Western, in an uncultivated community. And, the answers were short and simple. We all have a common value. The weight of the shame would outweigh whatever it is that you needed to buy. So the shame wasn't just on you as the individual, the shame now would lay on your children and your grandchildren, and when we look at the difference of how we come together as African community versus, all communities outside of ours, we are striving to find that common value. We come with different religions, different spiritual practices, different regional customs, and so on and so forth. And what I really loved and appreciated and was just so impressed with on this visit was the simplicity, common values, not religious based, not culturally based, just values that were based on truth, values that were based on, dignity, and so on and so forth. And I thought, this is something we need to work on in the Western world. When I think about community groups at the time, we have, my parents are born in the Caribbean, and, in Jamaica, you have a susu, or in Trinidad, you have a susu. My mom's Trinidadian, and they call it a partner in Jamaica, but basically it's a means of pooling resources and every week giving it to a different person, on the list. But here we saw a trust of investing in something that might not come back to you. It may go to your neighbor. It may go to, it may go to somebody you don't know, but that's a part of that collective. And it inspired me to really come back and have conversations and look at processes that we can develop locally, that we can build that trust, and we could build that sphere of awareness that just because I give doesn't mean I need to get back. There are people that are, when we look at developing our own social systems, networks, and supports for community, it means that you're making an investment in potentially yourself down the road, but most likely to somebody else that you won't necessarily, get back, or you may not even need, So when we look at, opportunities for growth, I would say we definitely can work on developing these common values. And I think when we look at our traditional communities, regardless of their practice, the values are very common, right? So yeah, it was just such a wonderful experience to observe just this dignified approach to solving community problems, without having to go to, the government or local authorities. This is a way that they've been doing for years, going back probably beyond 30 years of supporting each other and growing the community so that they can be sustainable and self-determined. Because the wonderful thing about this process was that it was a self-determined process. It wasn't something that was dictated to them by Robert's rules or, all of these different practices that we tend to adopt to normalize how we function with one another. So yeah, I feel so bad because I had all these wonderful pictures to share, but in a nutshell, that was my experience in terms of community development, looking at agriculture, looking at education, looking at housing. Later on in life, of 2019, I had the opportunity. Well, in between there, I was able to travel to Brazil and to Cuba, all over the United States, the Caribbean, looking at different community economic development, community development models. Every community development model has an economic piece. And so the great thing about, again, having that global experience was that everywhere that I went, you found this common value being the thread for success. If it was, a thriving permaculture community, it was because everybody that was a part of that community bought into and lived a common value, a common ethic in terms how they relate with one another. In 2019, in my current role, I was able to take 18 people, 10 youth and 8 supporting adults to a life-changing trip for some of our youth from East Scarborough. We went to Ghana, we went to Togo, we went to Benin for a period of 26 days. And the bulk of the time we spent in Porto Novo in Benin. And the goal was to get to this particular space called the Songhai Center. And it's a Songhai Sustainability Center. I suggest you look it up online. Just there's so much inspiration to be had, and just a model that can be quickly adapted to any growing community, be it a community on the continent or even a community here. In fact, our youth and my staff, where I'm currently employed, we are in the process of animating a lot of what we learned. The name of the center is Songhai. I can type it in the, I'll type their website in the chat, songhaicenter.org. So at Songhai, the model is everything is reusable, every single thing. And this was a great model of all inclusiveness, of whole systems. When we talk about whole systems in terms of food systems, economic systems, this particular space was an exact example of what we would be looking at. You had social enterprise models, so cafes and grocery stores that were funding the operations, the operations of the programs. So they have a vast amount of agricultural programs, but these social enterprises, so their warehouse, so they have a distribution warehouse, they feed so this was a demonstration, a 25-acre demonstration site, but they have about 6 different farms that feed into this particular site on the periphery of Porto Novo. And they're the #1 grain supplier for the city. So their social enterprises allow them to fund and provide long-term job opportunities for all of their staff. They have a hotel that's run on site on 25 acres that supports students that come from all over the world to learn this model. Their model, again, is 100% recyclable, 100% sustainable, and down to the very fish bone that you discard in your dinner turns into meals for the fish in the aquaponics farms. All plastics are recycled on site and turn into baskets for gardening or for the different hotel or the learning spaces. There are, there's just absolutely zero waste. And the whole concept is to have a complete cyclical relationship with the earth and with one another. Their priorities in order are the environment and human beings, and relating to one another, again, on a common value principle that is anchored and rooted in sustainability and in resilience. And I've never seen anything in all of my travels that we thought, okay, everybody likes to say they're 100% sustainable, they're 100% regenerative. And then you see things getting thrown out in the garbage. They actually have staff that are hired to go through the garbage and sort every piece of garbage so that it will go to the right recycling center. They have smelts and blacksmiths on site, maybe about an acre or quarter acre worth of buildings that take molds of every piece of machinery that come into. So let's say, and what I mean by this is, for example, they buy a new tractor, it comes in from Germany. They will dismantle the entire tractor and take a mold of all of the mechanical pieces inside. So that if anything breaks down, they're able to create on site the piece that they need rather than waiting for it to be shipped over, And when it came to their economics, they all, when we looked at the economic development piece, like I said, there were social enterprise models that are run by local women and children. Most in this particular learning center, any child across Africa can come, and once they're independent and they can speak French, they can come to the school for free. So in order to keep them employed and keep that scenario viable, they provide job opportunities through the various gardens or the various social enterprise, be it the warehouse, be it the storefront, be it the cafe, so on and so forth. And they all agree that they're going to live financially at a particular ceiling so that everybody can thrive, which I thought was remarkable, because we live in such a competitive environment where we're constantly pushing to outdo or outgrow, or, there's always a reason why we need to have more. And again, all of this is anchored in a common ethos around how we are going to approach and embrace the world together. How are we going to come together as a collective and anchor how we move forward our financial sustainability and security? So these two models juxtapose each other. I think one demonstrates more of a people to people, scenario to scenario, and the other in Shanghai is this broader collective vision that keeps narrowing in as you get to the center. I think some of the key learnings that that came out of this particular experience. Shanghai was founded by a Nigerian priest who has a whole universal concept when it comes to even his theology and his practice. And he, looks at global frameworks and looks at Shanghai as an opportunity for African people, regardless. Like if you say to him, Father Francis, are you from Nigeria says, no, I'm an African. He says, this is a model that can be replaced or replicated across the continent to create an advantage for our people. And this is the type of cutting edge technology that is relatable, that is easy to pass on, and is sustainable long into the future. I think one of the things that we experience, especially in Benin, crossing a lot of the waterways, was just the amount of abuse and eco waste, plastics lining these beautiful waterways. I mean, naturally, you'd want to jump in and swim, but you can't because they're almost, sewers at some points where, plastic bottles, plastic bags, all of this just trash is lining these beautiful, beautiful waterways. And if we as a community could come together as a collective mind, can you imagine how we can shift that whole narrative to not just better us as individuals, but better the earth that we depend on, for generations to generations. And so even again, going back to their economic pieces, it looked at a collective approach to living that would make sure that everybody was sustained in an equal way when it came to the economic pieces. Not to say, there were people who went out on offsite and they did, additional work and additional jobs, but in terms of being able to sustain themselves and thrive based on the revenues that were being generated on site, it was an equal distribution model that made sure that everybody was living at a common standard. So those are the two key experiences that I would share in terms of opportunities for us to really take pieces from and build. I would suggest, those embarking on any type of collective venture, take the opportunity to travel and look at different models, look at communities that work. Often we read about them in books, or we conceptualize around them, but there are many communities and they're very, very the simplest places on earth that have been thriving for generation to generation, and not just sustaining themselves, but as I said, thriving. And so it's very important to visit and really sit with the elders and get the learnings for how to do this in a way that is, again, sustainable, that is, regenerative, and that again has a return on investment that everybody can agree on and be happy with. So I'll leave it there. I don't know if there are any questions.
If anybody has questions, please prepare. I'm just going to say a little piece from what I've gleaned. And one of the things that hit thank you, by the way, for sharing all that you've shared, because it was very, very powerful. You gave various examples of how we can pull together and accomplish community development united. And one of the things that hit my spirit, like maybe 10 minutes into you talking, was that collective value piece. Yes. And how critical that is. And there's the necessity factor that when we have that collective value and necessity hits, the action follows.
That's right.
And I think, like, even with the example that you gave with Tanzania, I think it is Tanzania, yes. And how they didn't have a bank and it was 3 hours away, and therefore that prompted them to become creative in solving a communal problem. And that shared value system protected that asset, those monies that they put together, that sense of pride within themselves, as you said, that they didn't want to be the one who was caught trying to steal the money. Yes. And their respect for one another then secured their collective movement and their initiative to create this place where they could keep their money safe and all of that. So I just really, really loved a lot of what you said. But that's very specifically for me. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to go through the chat and see if there are Any questions? Small steps lead to big results. Create systems. Think cyclical. So there's okay. Okay. So I answered the name of the center. Does anybody else have any questions or input? Trust piece is key. I think for me, another question that I'd have, or I didn't really ask a question first, but I will ask my question now. In terms of the trust factor, you mentioned something about like Susu, our partner, and I remember even like visiting. Daphne was my mom. Is still even to this day is my mom's partner person, and she's the one who would collect the monies for the community. And I used to remember like being a little kid and be like, my goodness, that's a lot of money. Like imagine she, through her hands was hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm sure, over the years, maybe even more. And how do we now, what are some tips you can give us to collectively establish that trust among strangers with all of the differences that we have, different cultural backgrounds, coming from different walks of life, different levels of, investment, what do they call it, thresholds,
Mhm. Yeah,
what,
no, I
yeah.
completely get your question. Yeah, so it's all I often, think of the banker lady, right? Like that's what we call it, the banker lady. And so the reality is that they start off small and they build up, a reputation. You build up, a trust. Trust not is earned, right? It's something that you have to action and demonstrate, being an upright person and being an honest person and being a dependable person, because you could be the first three, but if you're not dependable, it causes confusion. And that's it. Mindset is definitely, even with my team, my leadership team, I spent maybe the last 3 years just working on their mindset, shifting from a siloed approach to it's just my job, it's just my department, it's just my work, to how do we look at how do we become interdependent parts of one whole? And it's invested work in developing a common mindset that's not just vocalized, but it's demonstrated. So with the Susu or the partner, it's somebody who you've seen grown maybe 15 people into 10 groups of 10 or 20 10 groups 20 groups of 10 that are running simultaneously, and they're able to um, meet the demand without a hiccup. I mean, there's a hiccup here, there, now and then, but they've always demonstrated professionalism. They always demonstrated, often I remember my aunt being the banker lady, and she would have to take from her own money because somebody was late, because she didn't want her reputation to be damaged, right? So she would take from her own, or her own hand, or she'd strategically figure out how to move the money so that somebody was, whoever she was paying out was never late. And it's a developed skill. I think it takes time. Again, having that common value that's demonstrated, trust is built, right? So whoever you do put, following through, as much as we can say it, if you don't see it in the action, then that's where it can be harmful and just further deter us from our common goal. So definitely, coming together on a common goals that are simple, that are tried, tested, and true, and that, they foster a unity amongst us despite our differences, despite our challenges, despite our obstacles and opportunities for growth. We know that in these particular values, we can always realign,
Amazing. Thank you for that answer. I'll follow up with another question. I'd like you to speak. Well, it's not really a question, but it's an ask. I'd like you to speak a bit to the importance of us being rooted in our African culture. And when I say African culture, I'm also including the diaspora,
Yeah.
whether it's your African American or your African Caribbean cultures, because those are all they carried with them a lot
Yeah,
in
so
that
important.
passage, and how important that is to form that value structure within our group.
So it's not just important. I think it's the essence of
Mm.
us coming together. You know, it is the very essence, the very nucleus of where we grow out from. If we don't understand who we are, where we've been, how we've gotten here, how, you know, the purpose, our collective duty, then you can't be successful in collective endeavor, right? Like it's just, that's just the bottom line. It's funny, before this call, I was on a meeting for North American traditional spiritualists, and this is a collective of, you know, the Ifa, the the Kemetic, the all different African traditions coming together to synergize and harmonize at a particular time of the year, and share, you know, on their common values, rather than trying to polarize, you know, each other, from you sway one to the other. And I think this is something that is been lost, you know, in our culture, in our traditions, over, you know, the last 400 plus years. We've been forced to assimilate to a culture that is not naturally, you know, has nothing in alignment with our, you know, way of life, you know, and how, who we are and how we function as a people, regardless of your practice, right? And a lot of people are still, you know, internally oppressing themselves when it comes to their self-identity. They still walk with a lot of trauma. There is so much healing that needs to take place. And often we, you know, depending on where you're at in your own personal metamorphosis, you don't know, you know, maybe you don't know about your culture, you have no access to it, or you are still in a sense of self-denial in terms of embracing and accepting, right? And you know, there'll be discourse or disagreement around the right way to go, but then there's always alignment around, again, those common values and principles, shaping principles and unifying factors. And I think that's the gem that we need to kind of polish and hold on to. And when you look at, you know, policy and practice and protocol within traditional communities, they're very similar, right? There's a respect, you know, for one another. There's a respect for other cultures. There is a hierarchy. There's a tradition. There, you know, there is a rule of order, right? And we've come into a culture that I think consistently projects and they flaunt so-called disorder and so-called freedom, you know, right? And they look at hierarchical societies, or they look at traditional societies and try to, you know, dismantle them because it just doesn't fit the mold or fit the agenda that is at hand, right? So it's a critical piece. You don't do Black economics, you know, African economics, community development without understanding yourself as an African person. And I think that was one of the wonderful things that we experienced in Shanghai, was that, you know, part of their work is to unify the African, you know, the family, regardless of which part of the world you come from. You know, if you are an African that lives on the continent of Africa, like I shared, you can go to school there for free, because the whole idea is for you to come gain this knowledge and go back and make your community, you know, a better place. And so we have to stop looking at ourselves as fragmented pieces. You know, we definitely have to look at ourselves as one people and understand what that means to come together and build as one people. And I think from, you know, from the tip of, you know, the continent to the very South Africa, you'll find that that is a common principle, regardless, you know, of country, of region, and the cultural practice. You'll find that that unifying factor is there.
I love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much, Utcha. I think Yvonne added mindset change towards common goal through education and training. Absolutely. Absolutely. Does anyone else have any further questions?
And also taking the time.
Okay.
Hello, can I ask a question?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, one thing that strikes me is the fact that the predominant experience you've shared with us was coming from the African continent, as it were. So I wanted to know what how the dynamics of the group economics dynamics played out in a country that has experienced racism as we do in Canada. So as to kind of give us a perspective to juxtapose the Africanness and African values with our constant daily struggle against racism. So the only country that I can say has an element of that is Brazil. And since you went there, could you just explain or share your experiences or what you think we need to know as to how to manage racism and still carry on with propagating our African values?
Big question. I I think when we look at Brazil, what they have is a common, even, a common agreement that the African spiritual traditions are the go-to, right? So you can be Catholic, you can be Christian, you can be, you can be of any other faith, but I found when it came to understanding Orisha, or when it came to understanding traditional, traditional water practice, everyone took part. And very much when I, went to Ghana, you would have the Bembe, but then you would have the Catholic priest, the local priest or the local pastor come, and he would say the prayers first, and then they would go into the traditional ritual. There is no otherism, right? Like we can all exist within the same framework because there's a seat at a table for everybody in that concept. The challenge in the Western Hemisphere is that it's built on a capitalist agenda, right? It's built on an agenda of white supremacy. It's built on an agenda of power and privilege. It's systemically designed to be inequitable, right? And I think those who have come to the Western Hemisphere, in particular Canada, in Toronto and surrounding areas, those who have done successful, they have anchored to their commonality. So when we look at the Muslim community, when we look at the Sikh community, when they anchor to their commonality and they strategize amongst their community to strengthen where they need strength. So within one mosque, you're going to have 10 lawyers, you're going to have some contractors, you're going to have all of the pieces that you need to build a healthy community. And everybody's invested in seeing each other grow in these fields because they understand that they need one another to have a viable community that they can rely on and reinvest into, right? And sadly, the examples that we have of this being successful were at the peak of racism in Canada. And so we look at communities like St. Catharines, and we look at London, Ontario, and we look at Nova Scotia. And you have examples of towns that, worked their way up and were thriving as Black communities. And the minute that they were able to stand shoulder to shoulder or toe to toe, let's say, with their Caucasian counterparts, they were dismantled, right? Like they were dismantled, burnt to the ground. They were, our families were raped and killed and displaced, and here in Canada, right? And then what the challenging thing about that is that we have a legal and an economic system that backs, white supremacy, and it backs the white power, and it backs white privilege. So there's the legal system is set up so that those who are most disenfranchised cannot win unless they have the financial power to sway, and move things the way that they need to. And that's where we come, fast forward to, this particular time, where we see communities coming to Ontario that are thriving and doing extremely well, because they understand that amongst them, they have to have, a collective consciousness, a collective vision that is not self-serving. It's about creating a base that your future can depend on. So we used to operate an African-centered school for maybe about 10 years, just under 10 years in Scarborough. We were next door to an Islamic school. And it gave us a great opportunity to really learn from them just how, community is built. This particular school initially was just in a warehouse that they had put up partitions and divided into different classrooms. It was every child at the mosque was expected to attend this school because it was a community school, right? They said about more than 90% of the mosque families sent their children here to this particular space. And they had their own food bank, they had their own social systems. So if there were families that were in financial need, they were able to go to the mosque and talk to the social systems folks to get support that they needed. They realized that where they had deficits, they had to invest in the future. So children that were coming up in engineering or dentistry, or just a simple thing, just even, car dealers, dealership owners, salesmen, all of these different areas that build a broader community, they collectively came in and decided that they would invest in each other to make sure that they were able to get the education, get the training, get the support that they needed to create, these fibers of trust and development. And so, when we look at success in terms of cultural community development, these are the communities, that we have to look to and look at the models, in terms of what it is that galvanized them in order to do this, to be so successful. And you can see that it's, again, you'll have Muslim community, you'll have Sikh community, you'll have Hindu community, but the common thread is that they are one people. And they, regardless of their religious or traditional practice, though they create space for everybody to, to cultivate and to thrive, they come together under that one common denominator, right? That they are South Asian. Mm-hmm. And that is, pillar, that's the pillar, and that's the strength, that regardless of whatever religious path or traditional path they choose, as South Asians, they are one, right? And you'll see that the investments, even in our experience with our neighbors, if they couldn't find it within their community, next they would go to an Arab business or a South Asian business, what was closer to them, right? In terms of trust and so on and so forth. So I hope that answered your question to some degree.
Yes, thank you. I have another question. I have a number of questions. I hope it's okay to ask my questions serially.
No problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I know I have interacted with some people. I know, for instance, in the Sri Lankan community, there's this practice that they have. If a child has gone to university in Canada, let me talk about Ontario, and comes out and has a lucrative job, the salary of that child is used to pay for the school fees of a sibling coming from following her or following him. The child has no right over that income that she's earning. So that way they make sure that everybody in the family has an education. So I wanted you, that's one example. I wanted you to marry that and give me if there's an instance of something similar that you witness in all the African communities that you have seen. Number two, the Jewish community religiously, as a matter of course, they have the kind of training that the young people go through. They train themselves to be resilient and have all the attributes or whatever they need to withstand the hatred and vitriol that come at them from the wider society. So it's like a coming of age kind of practice. So if you could tell us that if we saw a similar kind of training in the African community. Then the third one that I wanted to ask, which is critical, is since we come from different backgrounds and we have all sort of disposition, one critical factor that I think we will need to lay out to sustain ourselves is conflict resolution. If we have conflict resolution in our community, how do we resolve it outside of the police system? Because I find that once you bring in the police into a communal conflict, a communal dispute, problems arise and that trust issue is damaged. So do you have any example you can give to us that is African, that you can tailor to our own community to resolve conflict? Because any community coming together, we definitely have disputes coming up. Thank you.
That's great questions. I'm going to try to answer them actually backwards. So tell me if I miss one. So in terms of the trust factor and or the conflict resolution factor, I think we have to go back to our traditional councils, right? A council that's elected by the people of elders, you know, that again, are elders, not just old people. Elders are people who have been enlightened, that demonstrate, you know, all of the values that what we've come to unify together under. And they as individuals and as a collective, they are prioritizing the sustainability and the justice, you know, pieces that need to be in place in order to have a fair and equitable outcome, regardless of the conflict. And so, you know, we've had elder circles for community groups. I currently have a project that I'm working on at work where this is an anti-violence project where youth who have minor criminal offenses will be judged by a community collective of their peers and elders. And they will give, you know, the suggested remedy. And if the police, you know, along with a police officer that, or not a police officer, but we share that with our local police department. And if they meet their goals, then it's never reported and it doesn't tarnish the record. If they continue to offend, then they move into the police system. And so I think if we can develop similar circles of trust and have these table of elders that you can bring issues to, that you can bring conflict to, and you know that, and you trust that these individuals will come together and give a response that is in the best interest for the win-win, right? Because we're always seeking the opportunity for the win-win, the opportunity for us as brother and sister, you know, for the two that come together in discord to go home, you know, in hand in hand and in peace. And so we reestablished that by building a community that has these collective spaces that, or collective bodies that we're able to turn to when we do experience conflict. And it will be met, we can trust that it'll be processed and decisions will be made based on, you know, again, rooted in a common value. Now, the other question you had was around,
Rites of passage, I believe.
Did you say rites of passage, was it?
Was it rites of passage, Chigozie?
And I'm talking about the kind of training, like a structured kind of training to teach young Jewish people some kind of skills.
Oh yeah. So the challenging thing with that, a lot of times what happens, so in the Jewish culture and Jewish religion, that, you know, some of these things are religious requirements, right? Like, so even there are religious requirements that require one to do ABC. There are cultural practices that require one to do ABC. In a community that you're building off of the ground, again, anchoring in those commonalities, anchoring in that common vision, that becomes the foundation or the basis through which you are teaching everyone that's at the table now, but you're also passing on to the children in the next generation. So it becomes firsthand knowledge to them. They understand from childhood that they have a stewardship responsibility in terms of their families, in terms of their community. We don't teach that now, right? Like, I don't know any space, any Africans, outside of maybe African-centered schools or, you know, certain really inwardly in tradition, practice in community tradition, but where this is taught as a collective, right? There's no space where we've said, regardless of what, as African people or diasporic, you know, as children of African descent, we are going to come together and we are going to make sure our firstborn in the house, you know, is going to follow ABC, and it's not replicated or demonstrated anywhere else. that would make it normalized. Because that's another thing too, is that we're looking to develop, this project is looking to develop a traditional African community amongst a community that's already been established and normalized, right? So every day that you send your children out to school, they're gonna say that they're gonna get into high school and say, well, when I go to university, I'll be paying for my younger sister. And people, don't you know that's your money? Don't you know that that belongs to you? You need to sue your parents, all of these different ideals. So it needs to be practiced and demonstrated, not just verbalized. I think often we, as children of the African descent, we tend to get stuck in the conversation pieces, and the demonstration is lacking. That's why even to this day, it's hard to even identify a community that's predominantly or all, African. You have little pockets, Jane and Gill, you have Brampton is in you have all these different spaces. But when you look at the control factors, when you look specifically at the economic factors, we're not reinvesting. When you look at there's a lot of research that shows where money is reinvested within from community to community, you would see that we have the least reinvestment in ourselves. We invest in every other community except for our community. So when we look at institutionally, healthcare, all of these different pieces, there's little minimal investment. So these are these are the pieces you need to unpack and look at. Where are the deficits, and then how do we shift the paradigm on that so that we are setting the example specifically through our day-to-day practice, so that we're influencing the generations behind us. Because if they don't see it and they just hear it, they're just going to be very swayed, because they spend 10 hours a day in institutions that are not your home. And that is a big difference when you look at the Jewish communities. They go to church or the mosque, or sorry, what do they go to? The temple.
Synagogue.
The synagogue, there you go. They go to the synagogue, but then they go to school at a Jewish school. So, the school also emanates and really reinforces the values that they're learning at the synagogue every weekend, right? So it's the same here. In order to really take it to that level, you have to also own your institutions so that you can set the agenda, or you're fighting, against the outer system all the time when it comes to the next generation.
Can I add something too as well?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think just to add, and that was a great answer. Your answers were great, all of them. But I'd like to add also that one of the things that I've noticed, like, for example, religiously, so with your Jehovah's Witness and your Muslim kids, even though they go to a school where it speaks, a lot of the ideologies and beliefs and everything go against what they believe in, I find that it helps that they go back home and have that extended community of people who also believe the same thing as them. So for example, they'll have like your Friday evenings where they go to the mosque school and they're with other children within that mosque school that also believe and practice, their cousins, etc. And then the other part of it is, I think this speaks to the difficulty that, with teaching your kids values and having them hold those values when they're living in a society that is anti their values or against their values is what we're also trying to solve. Because if your neighbor is of the same mindset and value system as you, and then your friend down the street also, and then you have other people around you, and we keep building and expanding on these communities and moving into the same communities, which is, you mentioned as well, which is what the other groups do, then we now establish a communal value. So this even speaks to the importance of that, because it's true, like even with my kids, we're constantly fighting the battle of that tear and pull to assimilate to the culture that's really their culture, because that's all they see, other than when they come into their own house and maybe visit their cousins every month. you know? So I think you're absolutely right, but it also speaks to the importance of us doing this so that we can have our kids break free from that dual consciousness that we all, especially growing up here in Canada, had to deal with and had to grow through. It's a real struggle.
So true. It's so true. And again, I think there's an opportunity for us to create, create community that is, when you go away, you go to the islands or you go, I think my mom's from Trinidad, and you'll have a community where, for weeks you'll go and you won't see one white person, right? But you have a community that has a church, it has a mosque, it has a temple, it has, traditionalist space, tents usually, right? You have your Shango Baptist, you have your Orisha, and they're all living in community amongst each other, and there's still a common value in terms of expectations for children, expectations for how institutions should function, expectations around, how we should commune with one another, because there's a common, again, value that supersedes any religious or traditional. When you go to school, you're expected to behave in a certain way, the teachers is expected. So we just lost that over here, right? Like it was designed completely different over here, and we live in a society that focuses more on our differences and celebrating we have all this celebrating differences, celebrating this as a way to get people to digest being islands unto themselves, right? And forgetting their interconnected relationship with one another, also their responsibility. It's funny, we have a small cabin on our property, and my father-in-law, when we first moved up here, he said, we grew up in a house that was no bigger than this. There's five of us, right? And you look at it and you think, how would you can barely turn around in here. And here we live in a country that the first thing we want to do is put our children out and let them get their own place. We're just counting down the time till they're out of our hair and we don't have to worry about this is not our cultural way. When you look at Chinese communities, you look at South Asian communities, their elders come and live with them. They become the childcare for, most children that in their homes have a relationship with their grandparents that is solid because their parents are out working. And then when those parents become grandparents, they know their duty is to the grandchildren, right? But we bought into a culture that says, get your own, do your own. Why, you have this big house, 5-6 bedrooms, 2 people, 3 people live there, but it's just great to tell people, of your big space. Where we come from communities that we live amongst each other, right? In Cuba, it's illegal to be homeless. Like it's against the law. They have zero homelessness. Because wherever you were born to, that's your residence, no matter what. Mm-hmm. So unless you marry and you move into your husband's family's residence, family always lives with family. It's against the law. Very few people own their own home without any other, relatives living there. It's very few because it's against the law to be homeless. And how they solve that is the home that you grew up in is your home forever, unless you marry and go into another home. So, we have to, again, get back to a space where people can accept this as the common good and practice it, right? And it's hard to do, again, when you're going into institutions that are saying something else. Now, a community that is a predominantly African, diasporic African, Canadian, or whatever, you would have to have your local institutions. So let's say there's a Muslim community, they would have to adapt that value. If it's your, Hindu or even, even Jewish, there's a lot of Black Jewish community, right? So Israelite, whatever the tradition may be, they also have to adopt the common community values so that even in their sacred spaces, they are promoting and supporting, the broader collective vision. And I want to really emphasize that it takes time, and we have to be invested in this and know that it may not be even something that you see in this lifetime. It's a seed that you're planting for generations to come, because we've just been so fragmented as a people in the Western Hemisphere in terms of how we we come together. There's so much broken trust, so much, just so much trauma. So
Mhm. Thank you so much again. Does anyone else have any more questions? All right. So, Utcha, did you want to leave us with anything else or closing? Oh, wait, Yvonne has a question.
Sorry, I couldn't close. I couldn't let her leave without saying something. Um, I guess my takeaway from all of this is always when we're building for self, we have to think holistically, all the resources, all the facilities, all the programs that are available outside of our community and for our community currently, we have to think about providing those services. So essentially, we can really move the community anywhere we want, but making sure that we provide all the sustainability services and programs and systems and facilities that that we would need to survive. And it includes even survival training,
oh, for sure. Yeah.
for sure, all those type of things, food, so farming, transportation, so mechanical training and a gas station. And I think I remember Akeem was talking about that when we were looking at what was it, Georgetown? No, Georgina.
Mhm.
Georgina, I remember he was saying there's like one gas station in the whole area, so that's something we could look at. So like, my takeaway is that as we're thinking about Pomoja Pomoja Village, we're thinking about educating from daycare, from the womb all the way up to career development, all the different services and programs that we would need and how we would provide that. It doesn't have to all happen right away, but at least map it out so that we know that, okay, if you're a teacher, what are the things, if you're a childcare educator, what are the things that we would need to be able to set that up so that families know that when they move to the city, we can do it.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I think just wrapping it up, I would say, again, this is such a critical and necessary step for us to take as a people. I think we also have to be open to receive and to action and to be patient with the work that needs to be done, and it's really about being committed for the long haul. Whatever your, this is not your regular, Air Canada stock investment or anything like that. This is a commitment for, 7 generations, 10 generations to come. And what that means is that we are invested regardless, of the challenges that come and all of the opportunities for growth that it will provide for us, because we have a collective common vision for down the road. And again, your institutions, your most important institutions are those that your children take part in, most important institution. Because again, working adult education is very challenging, but working with children, if you can get them from cradle to career, then you've set the trajectory for how, everything should be grown in the long run.
Absolutely.
So all the, very, very excited to see how this grows. And I'm definitely, I've got the information. We're going to sign up our family, because I think, it's a wonderful investment for us to make in support, and very much looking forward to seeing how things come into fruition in the time ahead.
Thank you so much, Utcha. We really
Thank you.
appreciate you being
You're welcome.
with us and for your wealth of information. I definitely am going to watch this over again, because there's so much that you shared that we can glean from it and pull on when we're within our planning and with how we're going to build Pomoja together. So thank you so much for everything. Thank you so much for your visit. If it's your first time being here with us on one of our Zooms, welcome. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, oh yes, that's right. Welcome. We're happy to have you. We are Pamoja Community Investment Fund, and Pamoja means together. One of our mottos is no one left behind. And our goal is to build, and we are on the road to build Ontario's first Black community. We will build it for us and by us, meaning we are going to fund it collectively down to the hammer and the nails. We will be doing that as well together. We're going to pull on all of the resources that we have within the community to make sure that this becomes a reality and that all of us will walk into the homes in our community one at a time and together. So thank you for joining us. If you'd like to reach out to us for further information, please send us an email, info@pcif.ca. So I'll put it in the chat.
Fantastic.
And we have raised, for those who are new, we have raised how much again? You want to show that chart?
Yes, I will. pcif.ca, send. So I'm going to just share my screen. There it is. So at $165,000 so far.
Wow, that's amazing. That's
Community
wonderful.
investment. So thank you everyone who contributed. Let's continue. And as Akeem would say, let's do this.
We are past the halfway point. That's amazing.
But you know, yeah, exactly. Yeah, amazing. So let's just keep pushing. This is towards the deposit for the land. We've found 31.7 acres in Port Colborne and also just under 1 acre of commercial land. The property is already zoned, and there's also a property plan approved by the city. We will be lobbying the city to expand on or to multiply the number of units that we can build on the land. Port Colborne is an aging population, city with an aging population, 60 plus years is the medium, 60 to 65. And so what our plan is to do, exactly what Utcha shared today, is to get in there, build, and to basically populate that entire area so we can have our own teachers in our own schools with our students, create our own communal culture and value system. And yeah, no matter where your background, where you're from, what your faith is or beliefs, we are all welcome within the community. And our collective shared goal is to see this happen, to see our Black community being built and uplifted, educated, and grow together in every aspect. So here's where we are now, guys. Thank you so much, everyone.
Can I
Yes.
well, can I assume that being that we are at 165 right now, so we're gonna keep the deposits open until we actually reach the 300, correct?
That is what we would like to do. Yes. So I've always said like it's a moving deadline because we've had deadlines and then the land is still available, so we kind of move it as the land is available to us still. So yeah, we'll keep pushing forward. And again, if this particular land unfortunately gets sold to someone else, we will not stop until we build this community. So do not be discouraged. We will continue moving forward. We'll find another land and continue on as we were until we accomplish this goal.
And some others have asked if they don't really have much funds and they want to know what's the smallest amount that they can come up to join in if they don't have the 1,500, but being that the project hasn't closed yet, what can they do if they are interested in when they would like to maybe set up a payment plan where they could possibly do maybe 500 a month until they can get their deposit in, and then the rest they will continue to make payments after that.
That's
How do you respond to that, please?
That's
what I
all
think.
fine too. I think one of the things is, I'll say the cheapest way to, or the least expensive way to partner with what we're doing and be a member is to be a member. So that's $9.99 per month, or
Okay.
$7.99 if you're 6 years and over.
So, hi everyone. How's everybody doing? Can
Hey.
everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
good.
Yep, we can hear you, Akeem.
All right. See the Pomoja t-shirt? All right.
Yes, looks
So,
nice.
okay, nice. So quickly, Utcha, I believe she's leaving. So I'm not sure if she's still here, but if she is, thank you so much for for joining and educating us this evening. And secondly, I just want to thank my my queen for stepping up and doing an amazing job. I've been listening to to everything, and thank you so much. I know it was probably awkward, like you doing it by yourself without me by your side, but I had to handle some other engagements today. So, but thank you so much for stepping in, and I definitely appreciate it. This is why it's important to have someone that that both of you are compatible, because marriage is something that you need someone, a partner, a life partner that you can basically walk hand in hand and work together. So thank you again for doing this. I appreciate you. Boomy also for putting this together, for working tirelessly to put this together. So Boomy, thank you. You can unmute yourself. I see you unmuted
Sorry,
yourself.
my son is raising
Yeah.
a riot here. That's why I've been on
Yeah.
mute.
So thank you. Thank you so much. And for the power team members, for the other executives members as well. Pauline, I see you on the call. Olufemi, thank you guys for the amazing work that you're doing. I mean, 165 guys, 165. This is great for everyone that has contributed so far. We're doing this together. Cross the river together and the crocodiles won't eat you. So African proverbs, and we're doing this together, man. And it's humbling that I'm a witness to the great things and amazing things that is about to happen to us working together collectively. And to answer Brother P's question, my wife touched on it already. Membership $9.99, $7.99. You can definitely be part of the group. But there's something else that we're working on behind the scenes that is offering mutual funds. We're currently working with a financial institution to get that in place. Once we have that, we will make it public and we'll announce it to the group as well. So with the mutual funds, you can contribute 50. I believe the minimum will be $100. So we're working on that. You'll be able to buy, and contribute to the project through the mutual funds contributions. So yeah, other than that, Nicole, it's over to you again. You're doing a great job. I'm just going to mute myself.
Just what you just said there. Is that in addition to the actual deposit, 1,500 deposit, or is completely different in terms of the mutual funds?
So the mutual funds, with it, the investors will just get a return on investments, so they won't get the other benefits and that we announce to the the members, like discount at the point of sale and all that. I mean, they won't be getting all the other benefits, just a return on their investment. So once we finalize the details, we'll make that available to to the general public, so we can receive funds from everyone. They don't have to be a member of Pamoja. They will just invest. If they invest $100, let's assume the return on investment is 8%. It's like you're buying any mutual fund from a financial institution like CIBC or RBC and one of those banks. So you get the mutual fund and you can, just invest and get your returns. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's agreed. And also, just to add to what Akin said, we are also working with people's budgets as well. So if you do have an issue with, similar to what Brother P mentioned, just write us at info@pcif.ca and we'll see how we can work something out with you. Yeah, because we definitely don't want to leave anyone out, especially, when it is still open.
So there could be a backdoor deal.
Oh man.
Don't do backdoor. Go to the front.
And also I'm not sure if Nicole, you covered this already. From our discussion with Folu and Isaac last week, we can actually put in an offer
I mentioned
of $100,000. So one of the things we're planning this coming week, this week actually, is to get a check, and we'll be one of those big checks, and we can write the amount of $100,000 on it, and we'll be visiting the Dream Makers office in Vaughan. So we will announce to the group that members that want to come have to sign up and let us know ahead of time so we can go together. One of the things I'm arranging also is a camera crew to film the whole thing, and so that way we can also put that out as part of our marketing initiative, right, to get more people to sign up. So we will have camera crews, people that taking pictures, doing the videography and so on and so forth. So we can then put that out and release have a press release to announce that a block of group investors and entrepreneurs came together, put their resources together, and put in an offer on a land, and they're looking for more people to invest in their project. So that can just be a campaign to get more people involved and to create awareness for what we're doing. So yeah.
Smart move. I like that.
Mm-hmm. All right, everybody. Does anyone else have any closing remarks or comments, questions?
If I can say something, I wanted to. It should have been nice to get the resource person's perspective, Utcha's perspective on how the government, since she's an insider, how the government facilitates this kind of community development that we are looking to. I wanted her perspective on if there were things, if there were any structural regulation or other that we should know about that supports the initiative or will work against the initiative that you are doing, so that we have it in mind, and while we're working on what we're doing, find ways to navigate it and be in line with whatever the government is doing. So an insider perspective on how the government assists, because in my personal study, there were one or two communities of Black, I can't remember the name now, that developed at some point, but they lost out because when the Ontario government, for instance, was trying to create a rail line, they deliberately, let me put it on quote, that was what my research told me, they deliberately avoided having a stop in those communities, and that denied the community of a gradual development, right? They made sure they had stops at other communities, but the only Black community that was on that line was avoided deliberately. And once the things continued, they were annihilated, and that's how the community died a natural death. So those are things that I wanted to get Utcha's perspective as to what exactly, how do you interface with government, and to be sure that if infrastructure or whatever is going our way, or whatever else that's been planned, policies, it won't kill the objective of the community. So if we could find that out, that would be helpful, I think. Thank you.
Definitely. And I think one of the strategies too, with one that she did mention that will probably help with that is being self-sustainable, or self-sustained. So developing within the community infrastructure, whether it's businesses, whether it's our own kind of transportation system, like maybe our own Uber system, just different things like that that make us more self-sustainable, and therefore we don't have to depend on government necessarily to come in and create those services for us. That would be a really great way. So really relying on the expertise and the know-how from within the group would also help us a lot in terms of that type of,
The perspective I was trying to, maybe I didn't articulate my thoughts properly, was to be aware, be five steps ahead of whatever plan that could be, covert plans that could kill the initiative. Because what she shared was that all the previous communities that had developed were deliberately killed.
Okay, yeah.
They were deliberately annihilated.
Mm-hmm.
So my take is, since we have that history at our disposal, what are the strategies we have to put in place to ensure that the covert efforts to kill this initiative, because there will be people that will be opposed to it. There are people that are opposed to Black development, Black power, Black money. They are going to be there. So what are the strategies that we need to have in place as a community and individuals to navigate and avoid having those encounters that will be geared towards killing the initiative? That's what I was thinking. So it won't be another statistics. That's all.
Yeah. So Nuko, do you want me to give it a try?
Yeah.
So Chico said 100%. You're right. And it's something that we definitely look into and continue to work on. One of the things that we want to establish as a group is we want to be innovative, right? Continue to adapt and continue to restructure, continue to plan, and continue to engage city officials and government officials, and be strategic, right? So, we have to study them. We have to study our history. We have to study all the things that happened in the past and try to avoid some of the mistakes, right? And, try to, close some loopholes. And yeah, those are some of the conversations we will continue to have. So you're very, very right. With regards to, us having a lot of enemies, right? Because I'm sure ideas like this have started before, and, they look for strategic ways to kill it. So we just have to be 10 steps ahead, like you said. So these are some of the things we will have, conversations we will have. But one thing I want to emphasize more than anything else is that there's power in unity, right? There's power in unity. One thing that scares the government more than anything else is when we move as a unit, when we move together collectively, if we're on the same page. If there's disunity, if there's conflict, if there's a crack or in our structure, or like holes in anything that we're doing, then they can look for opportunity to come in and take advantage of that. So we have to make sure we're on the same page. Let's not let money or the things like that divide us, right? Let's avoid crabs in a bucket mentality. I'm not saying you specifically, I'm saying for us collectively as a group. So let's continue to grow and look for ways to continue to work together, and also ways to continue to engage government officials and city officials, but let's do it together collectively, because we're a force when we're together. You see, we're a force, because the conversation changes when we are negotiating for 3,000 people, 30,000 people, 20,000 people, than if it's just one person. So that's the strategy we have to kind of go with. I know the natives right now, they're subjected to reserves and some of the areas that are really bad in terms of weather and so on. But what they have working for them is that unity, is them coming together, submitting proposals to the government. So the government, they listen to them, because they know these guys, they have a huge number of people, right? So that's what we have to do. And I'm completely with you, and I agree with you. We have to continue to study these people, study our history, and continue to engage city officials.
Thank you.
I would like to add to that. And Akin, do we have a government liaison that will, like, that communicates to the government on behalf of Pamoja? And, if we can also have that, like, if we can even let that be a topic where we can discuss, bring it up to discussion on in terms of, what some of these examples that has happened before, so we can look at where they failed and where they went wrong and what they did that they didn't do, that we can, try and be ahead, like, steps ahead to try and avoid it.
Yeah, I love that.
I know we will we say that we're going to discuss it and we will get into it, but there's it's a key point that she's bringing up, because we really need to look into it, because that enemy is always going to be there to try and prevent us. Though we are a community and we are doing our best to establish our community so we can work together as a unit. Certain policies are so deceiving, and they will find a way to, try and bring us down and to put a stop to what we're trying to do. So doing our homework ahead of time is something that, we should really put that on paper and, really discuss it further and look where we can go in terms of that.
So thank you, Brother P. Thank you so much for that. With regards to having a committee that deals directly with the government, we don't have that right now. But Ms. Savadny, she's in charge of the Elders Council. She's the one that is basically in charge of, the communication with government organizations, because she's in charge of our Elders Council. So, and she's actually tasked with, getting more members that want to join the Council of Elders to step forward, so they can work together and do that. So we will be putting out a write-up soon, a post that will ask people that are above a certain age bracket, because I'm a strong believer that with age comes wisdom. So they will be part of the Elders Committee and help with this initiative. So you're 100% accurate. We will continue to explore those options and work. We have to just be proactive instead of being reactive. So what do I mean by proactive? We have to look at solutions, right? We have to look at solutions instead of waiting to point fingers and blame people. So I completely agree with you. We're on the same page. With the offer that we're putting on the land, we will be putting a 60 days offer on the land, to hold the land for 60 days. And between that 60 days, we will try to engage the city officials in Port Coben, and try to meet with them and so on and so forth. So yeah, 100% we're on the same page with regards to this. And yeah, we will do it together, honestly. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I just want to also support one of Chigoze's points on conflict resolution. I think starting out, we should have that machinery in place, because where we have people, different people, conflicts arise. So within ourselves, we should have that machinery in place to address conflicts when they arise.
Thank you, Bumi. I think the bylaw covers that. So we're just getting the final draft of the bylaw. We will be sending that soon. You get an opportunity to read it, and then, add your suggestions and so on and so forth. And then we can then all agree to it, sign it into law. So any new member we get moving forward, we will just give them the bylaw, and they have to read it and, sign it. So yeah, the bylaw covers that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Nicole, is that it, or we'll have more? Oh, I think you have to unmute yourself. Sorry. Can you hear me? Anyways, so
Is it
people,
me?
yeah, it's you. You have to
Sorry.
unmute yourself. Yeah.
For some reason, I couldn't hear anything.
All right.
Sorry. Sorry, guys.
So yeah, you want to close out or you want to take more
Yeah.
questions? I don't know. It's up to you.
Yeah, we can close out. It's like 2 hours now almost. But thank you guys, everyone. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for all of your questions and contributions. We will close out for now. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening and your week. All right, everybody, thank you and see you next week.
Thank
Good night.
you.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.